Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Shannon Polly and I'm thrilled to be here with you today as part of the MAP webinar series, Strategies to Thrive. I am going to be doing a session called Acting as If, how acting can help you increase your well-being. And it's something that you might not have thought of some of these strategies that you can use to increase your well-being during this crazy time. I wanted to start off with a speech from a book that I co-edited with Catherine Britton, and there are over 26 MAP authors in it. It's called Character Strengths Matter, How to Live a Full Life. And Chris Peterson is the person that this book is honoring. He created the Character Strengths Survey, and he passed away, and all of the proceeds from this book go to a scholarship at the University of Pennsylvania. We've raised over $50,000 from the book alone and have given 6 scholarships to date, 1 every year. So each chapter of the book has a strength, a definition of the strength, a story about the strength, 5 or so ways to use the strength, and then a speech, a monologue, or a poem to help you embody the strength. And that's what I'm going to start with today. This is a victory speech by Winston Churchill. And I'm going to ask you after we're done what strength you think this might have been embodying. We have before us an ordeal of the most grievous kind, and many, many months of struggle and suffering. You ask, what is our policy? I say it is to wage war by land, sea, and air. War with all our might and with all the strength God has given us, and to wage war against a monstrous tyranny never surpassed in the dark and lamentable catalog of human crime. That is our policy. You ask, what is our aim? I can answer in one word. It is victory. Victory at all costs. Victory in spite of terrors. Victory however long and hard the road may be. So I say to the house that I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. But I take up my task with buoyancy and hope. I feel sure that our cause will not be suffered to fail among men. At this time, I feel entitled to claim the aid of all, and I say, come then, let us go forward together with our united strength. That somehow seemed appropriate in this time of the coronavirus and a lot of us at home. And the point of that speech is that it helps you embody a certain strength. So why don't you post in the chat panel what strength, if you know the 24 character strengths or whatever strength you felt like that speech was embodying. And I'm going to take you through some of our objectives while people are typing in the chat panel. I want to share, sometimes this is what Marty Seligman, the founder of positive psychology, says are neck down interventions that really it's the somatic, the soma, the body. In this crazy time, we want to embody physical well-being, and theater, arts has a way of helping us do that. So we're going to look at that. We're going to look at the internal and external aspects of presence. So frequently I use this talk to talk about how to present in front of people, but I'm twisting it a little to talk about our well-being because those things are also applicable. So I'm going to share a little bit of the science of somatic well-being, and I'm going to talk about some of the myths. So acting as if has some myths behind it, like it's about being inauthentic or fake, and I want to address some of those myths and give you some strategies that you can use to increase your well-being. Okay, let's dive in. So first we're going to look at the external aspects of presence. Since a lot of us are at home and this is about your well-being and not your presenting in front of a room, I'm going to talk about breathing, posture, and managing energy. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about anxiety management. There's anxiety management in front of a crowd, but also there's anxiety management when you are just managing a global pandemic, for instance. Then we're going to talk about the internal aspects of energy and presence, specifically the intention And finally, we're going to talk about how what I just did, reading something aloud, actually helps to increase your well-being. All right, so the external aspects of presence. There's breathing, there's posture, and there's managing your own energy. So let's start with breathing. Now, this is the one reflexive ability that human beings have an ability to control. So it's reflexive, but we have control over it. We don't have control over making our heartbeat less or slower, except through breathing. We don't have control over, our skin growing, but we do have control over our breath. So I love that Brene Brown has made box breathing popular. She actually talked about box breathing, which is where you breathe in for 4, you hold for 4, you breathe out for 4, and you hold for 4. So it's just like a box. But I want you to type in the chat panel. Yes, whoever wrote bravery, Churchill, it was about bravery, strength. So well done. Breathing, what does it do for you? Why do you care about controlling your breathing? Well, it slows the pace you speak. It lowers the pitch you speak. And I get this a lot. When I have women who are talking like this, it's hard to be taken seriously. It helps you be able to speak louder. But most importantly for this time, it helps you manage anxiety. It actually lowers your heart rate. That is one way you can lower your heart rate. So what I want you to do is I want you to do something where you breathe in through your nose on 3 and out through your mouth on 6. 5, 6. I want you to do it again. Breathe in on 3, out on 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, if you want an advanced technique, there's something called alternate nostril breathing, which comes from yoga, where you actually close one nostril, you breathe in, then you close the other with your other finger, you breathe out through the right nostril, then you breathe in through your right nostril, and you close the right and breathe out the left. Definitely clears out the sinuses. I actually did this once on the subway in New York City, and someone said to me, "Don't you feel strange doing that on the subway?" I was like, no one's paying attention to me. If I was walking around, with no clothes on, they probably wouldn't notice. So I want you to try it with me. Breathing in through your left nostril, and close with your pinky finger. Breathe out through your right. Now breathe in through your right, close, and breathe out through your left. The other thing that I'm going to have my amazing assistant, Piper Lynn, type in the chat panel is there's a strategy, an approach called the Alexander Technique. And it's spelled like it sounds, Alexander Technique. And it's used for people who have chronic pain. It's used for musicians, violinists who are contracting their muscles on a daily basis. And I highly recommend looking into it if this is something that interests you. Because if you have been taught to suck in your diaphragm or your lower belly for lots of Pilates classes, it's going to be hard to breathe deep into that diaphragm. So Alexander Technique, basically what you do is you put a book under your head, you lay on the floor with your knees up, and it releases the muscles in your lower back. I was told that I could not do this with corporate clients because nobody wanted to get their nice clothes dirty on the floor, but you can do this at home if you need to center yourself. Now, this is a funny little picture. I wanted to share some of the research on the, as actors, we call this outside in, an outside in approach. They did a test, this pencil test, and they didn't tell people what it was for. They told the study participants that it was for testing people who didn't have use of their limbs. Were they able to write with a pencil in their mouth? But what they were actually doing was simulating a smile, the muscles of a smile. And then the second part was they had them tape a pencil in between their forehead, which simulated the muscles activating of a frown. And what's amazing is what happened is people were happier when they had the pencil in their mouth, and they were less happy when they had the pencil in between their forehead. So this just shows that the outside informs the inside. If I, and this is, when I coach people who go into work interviews and they're on their iPhones and they're texting, Well, what they're doing is they're collapsed, and they're physically in the posture being scared, when really you want to walk into a job interview and be upright. Now, the clarification I want to make about this is that people often think, oh, so I'm supposed to smile even if I'm not happy, that's going to make me happy. That's actually not the case. Barbara Fredrickson has done some research at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, which is that if you don't acknowledge the true emotions you're feeling, that's actually worse. So I want to make that clarification. And Piper Lynn, if you can also type in the chat panel, the self-compassion.org. This website is really great for acknowledging the challenging emotions and the things we're going through right now. self-compassion.org. That's Kristen Neff's research, and I highly recommend it. Now, the posture, like I was just saying, when you're going into a job interview and you're collapsed, that actually leads you to be more closed in, less creative, less happy, less positive affect is the fancy term we call it. So physically, when you're at home, when you're working at home, when you're on a Zoom call, you want to be more upright and open. And the first three of these positions are actually incorrect. If you're in a meeting, a virtual meeting, how much of your body can you get above the table? Sometimes I'll work with women who want to assert themselves, and their hands are under the table, they're very polite. But men typically do this spread where they're, leaning across the whole table. So the outside informs the inside, and what I can feel, I'm a little scared when I just collapse in my chest a little bit. This is something where you actually can do an intervention of, oh, I'm doing that thing. You have more air to breathe, and you can physically stand up, be upright more. Now, Amy Cuddy has a book out called Presence, and she is the subject of a lot of controversy about her research on power poses, and that people felt more confident in interviews, and then the research on the change in their hormone levels. Subsequent studies, although I think she was sort of the subject of some scientific bullying, that's just a topic for another day. The actual data on confidence in an interview has stood through the people redoing her research. The levels of hormones hasn't quite stood the test of the research, but this has. So physically, if you have a job interview and you need to get ready for it, some of these things are great to look at, and she has a TED Talk you can look at as well. Now, the truth is that the little secret, I often get clients who want to talk about, how do I manage my time? I have so much going on. I have kids at home now. I'm homeschooling them, and I'm supposed to be working. How am I going to get it all done? Well, there's a few great resources that I want to share here. And the common research shows that it's not about managing your time. It's about managing your energy. How do you manage your energy? Eat, Sleep, Move by MAP graduate Tom Rath has distilled all of the well-being research around food, sleep, and exercise. I highly recommend it. That's sort of a one-stop shop. Smarts and Stamina by my other MAP colleagues, Catherine Britton and Marie-José Char. And The Corporate Athlete, you can find on HBR, really talks about how do you manage your energy. So when you're an actor and you're performing on stage, even if you don't feel like going on, you still have to do it 8 times a week. And that's where the sort of, authenticity, well, I'm just not feeling it. I just don't want to, why should I try to be someone I'm not? Well, if you have to run a marathon on that marathon day, you got to figure out a way to get yourself there. It's not about authenticity or not. I don't feel like going to the gym or exercising, but I know that I will be a better parent and a better employee if I do. So those are some things I wanted to chat about. So anxiety, what happens for you when you feel anxious? Please feel free to type in the chat panel. What happens for you physically? Is it, I see someone wrote that their neck flushes, they get red. For me, I get cotton mouth. When I'm thinking about just generalized anxiety about, being at home with my children and my husband, I have sort of my thoughts are spinning through my head. Okay, great. I see some things over in the chat panel. So there are a lot of different strategies for managing your anxiety. And one of the most amazing things, Aaron Beck, who is the founder of cognitive behavioral therapy, was on a call with us MAP graduates last weekend. And what was fantastic was he was talking about, the seminal field that he'd founded. He's 88 years old. And he also talked about weaving in positive psychology into it, weaving in what people do well into their cognitive behavioral therapy. But the ABCDE strategy is how you think about your thinking. So this morning, my daughter woke up, she had a fever, she wasn't feeling well, she wanted me to lay next to her. My immediate thought was, I have a webinar to do, I have to get ready, I can't lay here with you. And then I was feeling anxious. And I thought, okay, what's my ABCDE? I'm gonna reframe that thought. So I changed the thought to, well, I still have a couple hours, the slides are ready, I'm sure it's gonna be fine, and my daughter is the most important thing right now. So then my anxiety subsided. So that's one way of working on it. The other thing is, if you're presenting, you want to incorporate your mistakes. So last week I was doing a Facebook Live with my colleague, Senya Myman, and I was talking about presenting powerfully virtually for people who are working at home. And I had a piece of food in my teeth. And she cut off my video and she tried to tell me back channel. And I was like, no, let's talk about it. Don't have food in your teeth. I tried to just weave it in. And people who weave that in, instead of thinking, oh my God, this is terrible, they actually do better when they're presenting. The funny thing is, there is a piece of research that no one can tell you're nervous. And when you tell presenters that no one can tell they're nervous, then they become less nervous. So the only thing that could tell people is if you have this piece of paper. So don't hold a piece of paper. Or I had one client who had flop sweat, like pouring down his face, and he had to wear a jacket over it. Okay, so someone can tell if you have flop sweat. But knowing that most people are self-centered and they're not looking at you. The other strategy is, if you are asked a question, you don't know how to answer it, that you can always have a glass of water and it buys you a couple seconds. You're like, that's a great question. No one's gonna say, Shannon, don't drink that water, don't drink that tea, answer my question right now. They're gonna give you that time, and it gives you a chance actually to swallow, to breathe, and to center, and that's usually when the brain comes back. So feel free to type some of your suggestions in the chat panel for how you manage anxiety. Now, for those of you who are watching, you probably like research, you like data. I would be remiss if I didn't weave in Albert Bandura, who is a seminal researcher in the field of psychology. And his theory of self-efficacy is one of the ways that the acting as if strategy works and how it can increase your performance, but also your well-being. So into developing self-efficacy, you have performance outcomes. So if I am able to perform well, do a webinar well, then I have that inactive mastery. If I see somebody else doing it really well, if I'm watching Jan Stanley's webinar on rituals and I say, wow, she really connected with the audience, then I'm vicariously watching someone else do it well. Verbal persuasion, having a coach perhaps to say, well, I noticed you did X, Y, and Z, sort of encourages that well-being. And finally, the physiological arousal is also a part of self-efficacy. So that physical feeling of I did well, I performed well. So that's the, performing part, and part of the reason why acting as if and taking on this, upright posture and a louder voice and breathing deeply is the physiological arousal part. That's the external part of presence. And the acting as if, the doing it, saying a speech out loud, that's the inactive mastery or the performance outcomes. So that's one of the reasons why it works. Now let's go to the internal presence part. Why, how do you motivate, how do you inspire based on your objective? So as an actor, we call it having a super objective for a play. Every actor, role, character in a play has a super objective. Romeo and Juliet, one of Shakespeare's greatest plays, you think about Juliet, you know, she had a super objective to control my own destiny. So for her, it was, you know, everything, defying her parents, going to Friar Lawrence, pretending to kill herself, all of those things went to control my own destiny. So that is the objective. And when you're thinking about your work life, why does it matter? Well, when you have an objective, other people mirror you. They pick up on your energy. So there was a research study done with monkeys in Italy, and the monkeys kicked a ball and they saw someone else kick a ball and the same neurons in their brain fired. Then they had humans kick a ball, watch someone else kick a ball, and read the word to kick, and the same neurons in their brain fired. So I want you to think about this week coming up, what you, or I guess rather next week, what is your objective? What is, this sounds a little semantic, but it's an infinitive verb to blank. So it might be to inspire your team, to, you know, keep up their energy, to move people emotionally, to connect, maybe with a virtual team or with a family member. For me, I was thinking about trying to homeschool my children, which is not my top strength. And I was trying to think, you know, what's normally my objective? Well, I saw the homework that the teachers were sending, and it was to achieve, to impress the teachers, to help my children. And then I realized that I had it all wrong. I was doing instead of being. And so I chose a verb, to love. And that shifted the whole dynamic in my house. And instead of it being like me weeping at the end of the day of how much work they had to do and didn't get done, I thought, well, you know, I'm just going to love them through this. So this is your minute to type in the chat panel. What is an infinitive verb? And Piperlyn, I want you to type one in too. What is your verb of how you want to be in your work next week? To blank. So I'm going to let you type some of those in. The more powerful word you pick, the more powerful it will be. All right, so this is your homework. I'm seeing them pop up here. To motivate, to mentor, to research, to survive. That's fair, that's fair. We don't have to make it a big one. Those are great, fantastic. So you can do this for every meeting that you have. To heal, it's a great one. Well done, yes, absolutely. To heal, absolutely, nice one. All right, now I want to talk about deliberate practice. This is the acting as if. So one of the reasons why I picked Churchill is because in this crazy time, it feels a little bit like, you know, when you're at war, it's those seminal moments. And when you are experiencing it, when you're speaking out loud, your body feels what you're reading, and it almost doesn't know that you're not doing it yourself. So you can those vicarious experiences that I talked about with Bandura, that's one of those. So I want to read a speech by Abraham Lincoln, the Gettysburg Address. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives, that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will give little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work, which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead, we take increased devotion to that cause, for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain. That this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. So Abraham Lincoln seems very pertinent nowadays, and speaking about the dead who consecrate the ground and what we living have left to do. And that was under the bucket of wisdom in our book, Character Strengths Matter. So I'd like to tap into your wisdom and your questions now. I'd like you to type your questions in the chat panel. I promised that we would finish the majority of the content in the first 30 minutes, take a few questions, and then wrap up for those of you who have to get along with your day. So feel free to type any questions you have while I'm doing a little bit of a summary. Okay, so the acting as if, it's external, the physical presence, how you increase your well-being. It's a little intervention, maybe from slouching to standing, breathing, managing your energy. And then it's the intention. How do you want to be? How do you want to be in this time? And then the third part is, how do you speak the speech out loud? So I'm going to offer that anyone who wants to connect with me, you can send me an email and I will send you one of the speeches from this book. You can tell me which character strength you want me to send you the speech from, and I'll send it to you. It's also available in audiobook. We're very proud to have some Broadway award-winning actors, some friends of mine who've done the audiobook. If you'd like a free ebook on positive presenting, you can sign up on my website. So what are some of the other strengths? That's a great question. So there are 24 character strengths. This was a survey that was validated across all cultures and across time. And some of the strengths, the reason why I like this survey is it doesn't take a lot to define what they are. Creativity, curiosity, appreciation of beauty and excellence, fairness, forgiveness, gratitude, hope, humility, humor, kindness, leadership. So what the survey does, and if you go to viastrengths.org, Piper Lynn, if you can type that in the chat panel, actually viacharacter.org, viacharacter.org, the survey is completely free. That's the other reason why I like this. It's completely free. You get a list of your 24 character strengths. They have a youth version that you can take ages 10 and up. And they also have it in about 28 languages. So it's been validated all over the world. And that is completely free, and Chris Peterson is the reason why it was free. Okay, let's look for some other questions. Thank you, viacharacter.org. What are some other situations that you would actually have someone act as if or read a speech? Well, sometimes I'll have people, I'll do it before a coaching session if I feel like I'm not grounded or centered. It's a really fast way, less than a minute, for me to, get centered and to be present rather than, my brain all over the place. Good. I have the question about authenticity. What about the fact that this feels kind of fake? Like I'm reading a speech aloud. Well, what feels authentic to me is not going to the gym. that feels, I feel authentic watching Tiger King and eating, you know, Ben and Jerry's on my couch, but I also want to be more healthy. So when we were kids, we used to play, and positive emotion is important more than ever nowadays because of COVID-19. And the research shows that people with more positive affect, happy, smiley, more positive emotion are actually less likely to contact a coronavirus. They did this study with a rhinovirus. So if you just do it just for play, you know, reading aloud to kids with our funny voices, that helps play, but it also helps your brain feel more positive emotion. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate your questions. Feel free to email me with any more questions, and you can type in the chat panel your top insight and one thing you're going to try from what you learned today when you're back at work. As we all know, if you don't use it, you lose it. So that's your task. But I want to end with one final speech. It's one of my favorites. It's by Lou Gehrig. And if you're not American, you might not know that Lou Gehrig had a disease named after him. He unfortunately contracted an autoimmune disease that eventually took his life, and it took his mobility before it did. But this was his farewell to Yankee fans. I have been in ballparks for 17 years and have never received anything but kindness and encouragement. Look at these grand men. Which of you wouldn't consider it the highlight of his career to associate with them for even a day? When the New York Giants, a team that you give your right arm to beat, sends you a gift, that's something. When everybody down to the groundkeepers remember you with trophies, that's something. When you have a father and a mother who work all their lives so that you can have an education, that's something. When you have a wife who has been a tower of strength and shown more courage than you dreamed existed, that's something. So I close in saying that I might have had a tough break, but today I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. Thank you so much for being here, and I wish you all the best. Take care.